My name is Jamin Goecker. I'm a realtor in South Central Alaska, and my mission is to help you to build an intentional and significant legacy for yourself and your family by coaching in real estate. And today, what I'm going to be talking about is what are the things you need to look at as you are buying real estate in Alaska's danger zones. And I am just going to first off give you an idea for what those danger zones are, like what kind of those high risk places or higher risk than normal places are that you might be considering, and what things you need to look for as you're looking to purchase properties in those areas. So this applies for just regular residential homes, and it also applies to just raw land property. So we'll jump into that in just a minute, but before we do get started, you know what to do. Get this video liked, do subscribe, and let's go ahead and jump into this. The first danger zone we're going to look at are properties that are next to bodies of water. So this can either be rivers, it can be streams, it can be lakes, or it can just be the full-on ocean with an oceanfront property. If you can get that, awesome. But there are going to be some special considerations that we need to look at as we are buying property next to bodies of water. So number one is going to be looking at the amount of erosion that's going to be going on with that property. And one of the big things that I look at if we're evaluating a property on bodies of water is look at the tax record on it. If it says there is a half acre here and there is only a quarter acre of it worth taxable, that's gonna, big time out there. That's number one. Number two is we're gonna be going back and looking at the floodplain records that you can usually get through the Matsu government website, where you can actually go and see the maps of all the flood plains in the area and get an idea for if a property is going to be in a flood zone, or even worse, is it going to be in a floodway? So there's a difference here. So a flood plain or a flood zone just means, hey, if there's a flood, then there's a chance the property could definitely suffer some damages, and that's going to be a problem. If it's under a floodway, that means like you are right in the way of any kind of flood that's going to be coming. So that's something that's really important, and we want to be aware of that. And for some people, we might not be able to get financing depending on how much of that shore has been eaten away. For example, if you have to have minimum 25 feet between the property or the septic tank and the shoreline. If you don't have that, then I'm sorry, you can't really finance the property. It's going to have to be an all cash kind of a deal. Now, another thing is if you have a septic tank next to a body of water, you have to get a permit for that. I don't care if it's the Matsu Valley or not, they make an exception for that. If it's next to a body of water, you have to get a permit for installing the septic tank. So if you're looking at selling, that's something you need to be aware of. If you're looking at buying, that's something you have to check for to make sure that they have in fact done that, because that is going to be a requirement. The next thing that I would be looking at if it's next to a body of water, specifically a lake, is that sometimes they do have a lake management plan. So what this is this is going to be a list of rules of things you can and can't do on the lake. For example, some lakes are going to be all about float planes, and they don't let anything else out there because they don't want to see some dude out there paddle boarding as they're trying to land their aircraft. They don't want to deal with that. And quite frankly, I don't want to deal with a plane landing on me either. So that's all fine and good. But for some people, they might really want to just do kayaking. They might be on a spot where they don't want to have any open board motors at all. And so that lake management plan is going to be really important when you're trying to decide which lake it is that you want to find yourself on. So those are going to be the big ones. Make sure that you understand how the soil has corroded, or in some cases, maybe that's actually added to your land. And that's all fine and good if it's on a river or a stream. Sometimes you can actually add land to your property, and that's great, just depending on the ebb and flow of the river. But usually it does not, and we need to understand kind of the floodplains in the area and how FEMA really does determine this area. Depending on how much it's eroded away, it kind of can really start bringing down the value of the property that you're looking at if it's extreme. Because for the most part, these aren't going to have too big of a difference on the actual value of the property, but it is just something I want you to really be aware of before you jump into it. I am personally looking at an oceanfront property, and how much research do you think I'm going into on that one? Yeah, quite a bit, because I don't know if you've noticed, but the ocean kind of just does whatever it wants. And unfortunately, there's not much you can do to prevent the ocean from corroding the shore. There's a couple things you can do, but they're pretty limited, even with what you could physically do, but then also what you're allowed to do, with the governing bodies in the area. Most lakes or most rivers in this area, they're really not going to let you go put a bunch of stuff in there, because you're trying to prevent the river from eroding your bank away. And so that's just something for you to be aware of. You can't really expect that that you can just go make a bunch of alterations. It's going to be perfectly fine, because for the most part, people don't want you altering the river, just to prevent your property from having soil eroded. So that's number one. If it's next to a body of water, it's not a no, but it's a let's look a little closer to make sure you're confident about what it is that you're getting. Let's take a break here real quick. For those of you who have been watching for a while, you do know that I have a relocation guide for those of you who are considering moving up here to Alaska. And if that does include you, do make sure you reach out to me on my website down below and put relocation guide in the description comment section, so I know what to send you. So feel free to go ahead and do that. And let's talk about the other two danger zones that you need to be aware of as you are considering moving up here to Alaska. Now, the other danger zone I would consider are properties that are in the mountains. So it's not a solid yes or no either way, okay? So it's just a matter of understanding what the pros and the cons are of the specific property that you're looking at. It doesn't mean it's good or bad, okay? But in the mountains, the things I am looking for when I see one up there is I want to know, first off, does it have a holding tank for water? Because if it does, when I'm just walking up there to the property, chances are that the well that they have, because when you're up on a mountain, it has to go all the way down to find the water source and then bring it all the way back up. So usually the pressure is not going to be very good. They have a big holding tank there. That's usually a sign that the well doesn't particularly have a whole lot of pressure, or they've had instances where the water just doesn't pump at all, and you have to have the holding tank and you have to have water delivered up there to you. So not optimal, not really optimal at all. Not all of them are like that, but you just got to be aware of what you're getting. The second thing I really look for when we're talking about properties up in the mountains is it in an avalanche zone? So I'll let you go ahead and go look it up yourself, but we recently had an avalanche over on a Highland Road here in Eagle River. And it was, you need to go look at the pictures on it. Luckily, no houses were destroyed in the process. But yeah, it was something else. It looked like it came very, very close to just completely wiping some properties out. And that's pretty frightening, considering what would have happened had somebody built in that avalanche zone, which, the rules were, this is where it would come. So no, you're not allowed to do that. A lot of people kind of ignore that and kind of wish, we're not gonna have an avalanche. Well, the one time we do, it could have just wiped out tons and tons of homes that were in the ways had they been there. So yes, if you're in the mountains, just know where the avalanche zones are and make sure that you're not building or putting anything in there, because when it does happen, it's not pretty if you're in the way. It's for sure going to take you out. And the third thing that I look at if we're looking at a mountain property is it perched up on a mountain side? Like, do they have to have any specific engineering feats to really make it fit and make it stay on the side of the mountain? If it's perched up there, then I'm going to really want to make sure that they did everything and it's being done correctly, so it's going to stay where it needs to be. And the other thing I'm really checking out is to make sure that there's no soil erosion at kind of the edge of the property. If you're on a mountain cliff, I want to know what the soil erosion is over there if I possibly can, just to make sure that everything's good to go. Now, the third danger zone that I really consider are areas that are really prone to earthquakes. So I really debated if I was going to include this one at all, because there's really no such thing as an earthquake zone. It's Alaska. It happens anywhere, anytime. But really what you're trying to find is an area where the damage of an earthquake is going to be significantly higher. So when I am looking at an area, I really want to, if I get the chance, to check the disclosures from properties that have sold recently in that area if I'm concerned about earthquake damage. If I'm going through and seeing, hey, I'm seeing a lot of drywall cracks and stuff like that, I want to check the disclosures of properties that have sold recently in that area to see, hey, did they have big damage over there that probably this house suffered also? So that is going to be the big one when we're looking for properties, looking at properties that we're concerned about might have suffered more from the earthquake damage. And there are going to be certain areas that did suffer more from recent earthquakes than others, just kind of depending on how geographically everything is set up and how it shook out with the earthquake. Just because one area did really well in an earthquake and another one didn't, doesn't necessarily mean that properties in this area were not built a certain way. Usually that just means that the topography and geography of the area was such that got hit harder. It doesn't mean properties in that other place that didn't get hit very hard this time won't get hit just as hard if the earthquake changed this direction a little bit there. But not something we can really avoid, but it is something that we want to be aware of. So I sure hope this has been useful for you. Hearing about all the danger zones up here in Alaska, and do make sure you leave this video a like, and let me know if you have any questions in the comment section down below, and we'll see you next time.